Everyone, you're listening to Full Val Mode, and today we are shaking things up a bit in Arkansas politics. You're listening to Full Val Mode, and today we're shaking things up a bit in Arkansas politics. And if you followed me for any amount of time, you already know I've had a lot to say about our current U.S. Senator Tom Cotton, who funds him, what he talks about, and just as important, what he doesn't talk about when it comes to Arkansas. But today I want to introduce you to someone very different. My guest today is Micah Ashby, a lifelong Arkansan from a small town of Augusta. She is a Republican candidate for the United States Senate. She's running on faith, patriotism, term limits, school safety, and actually putting Arkansans first. What? First, you say? Not Washington, D.C. donors? Do tell. Anyway, we're going to talk about her story. Her seventh great-grandfather who served alongside George Washington. That is very interesting to me. Tune in. You're going to love this story. Her Ashby harvest plan for farmers, her push for term limits, and why she believes Arkansas deserves honest, present, accountable leadership. I mean, don't we all think that way? Unless you're the current incumbent. All right, let's get to it. This is Full Val Mode with my guest U.S. Senate candidate, Micah Ashby. Hey, everybody, this is Val, and welcome to Full Val Mode. I have a treat for y'all today. With me is Micah Ashby, who is a candidate for Arkansas Senate. Hey, Micah, how are you doing today?
Hey, Val, I'm great. And thank you for having me.
Yeah, I am so excited to talk to you. I mean, everyone knows how I feel about our current senator in Arkansas, Tom Cotton. Everyone knows how
Right.
I feel about him. So it is just a breeze of fresh air to have you on and to get to know you and to introduce you to Arkansans. So you want to tell Arkansans a little bit about yourself?
I would love to. So, once again, my name is Micah Ashby. I'm running for the United States Senate seat in primaries in March in 2026. So, just the basics laid out. But I am a lifelong Arkansan. I was born and raised right here in the natural state. I'm very proud of where I come from. I came from a little small town called Augusta, really small. I graduated with 21 students. So
Nice.
I'm a rural girl. I'm a small town girl. And, I was raised in a middle class family in a small town. And we didn't have much materially, but my family was huge on faith and patriotism. Those are the two things that were taught in my household. Faith and patriotism were the cornerstone of our home. And it shaped everything we did and everything that I believed in. And so I was raised on conservative beliefs because of that. And I voted conservative my whole life. And all of that was instilled in me when I was raised in that small town in Arkansas in my little middle class family that might not have looked like much, all of that instilled such a courage and bravery to do what I'm doing today. So I believe in patriotism. I believe in loving your country. And most of all, I believe in loving our great state of Arkansas. It means everything to me.
So, what was the exact moment you decided to run against your opponent, Tom Cotton? What was the single event, or like, when did you realize that Arkansas needed a different kind of Republican representation?
Right. So, one big influence of mine, and I want to say, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk. He was a huge influence as to why I ran for office. He poured inspiration in me and he made me want to get involved in politics. I credit him for that. That he made such a huge impact on my life. And I know many others, especially the younger generation. So that's one thing. The other thing is Arkansas is my home. And I believe the people need a voice. Arkansas is my inspiration to do what I'm doing now. The people of this state is my inspiration to run for this office. I believe that we can get back, and I've been called naive for this before, but I believe we can get back to an honest political system. And all it takes is voting honest people in. We need transparency, we need accountability, and we need to vote people in that have that. And that's why I'm running. I believe Arkansas deserves a voice that is honest and transparent, someone that is present, someone that cares about we, the people. And that matters. It matters to me and it matters to every Arkansan that I have spoken to. So I'm running to give the people a voice because right now I feel like the Senate seat isn't being utilized like it should. I feel like the people aren't being listened to like they should or like they want to be. And I would totally agree with that. Arkansans, I believe, deserve better. They deserve more attention from their elected officials. I believe that we can get back to a place that our forefathers intended, where you have honest politics. And those people that you vote in will hear the voice of the people. So that's my goal: honesty, transparency, and accountability. And that's what I want to give Arkansans.
So, speaking of forefathers, I hear that your, I'm gonna get this right, great grandfather was George Washington's general and confidant. Is that
He
true?
was. That is true. They were very close friends. He served in the Revolutionary War. He served in the French Indian War for a little bit as well. His name was Captain John Ashby. There are two Captain John Ashbys that actually served. Only one of them is my relative, but he was good friends with George Washington. They confided in each other. A lot of their letters are actually in the National Archives. Our family has them too, that are from George Washington to Captain John Ashby during the war. If you go on and you look online, you search Captain John Ashby's name, you'll even find some letters where they had bickerments back and forth, and it's actually kind of funny to read them. Our family laughs at them sometimes, but yeah, him and George Washington were really close. They were friends, and even after the wars were over, they continued to visit each other. And all of this is documented in National Archives. So if anyone's interested, you're more than welcome to go and search it and be just as interested as I am.
Well, I would just tell you, hearing that, you just gave me chills go up the back of my neck, and I got tears in my eyes because, like, that's like a return to founding father's purpose politics. Like, while your opponent feels like the Pentagon. I mean, talking with you and hearing about that, that literally makes you feel like the Republic.
And
Like the
that's
legacy that you have there.
yeah, and that's my goal, is to get back to what our forefathers intended for this country to be. I'm just one person, but one person makes a whole lot of difference. It really does. And when we vote people in that have that mindset, that makes a whole world of difference. So I believe in what our forefathers said. And I don't mean to change the topic just a little bit, but Abraham Lincoln has one of my favorite quotes. And he said that what is taught in the schoolroom of one generation will be your government in the next. So I believe, while we're talking about forefathers and beliefs, I believe that we need to make sure that we get politics, or political agendas, I should say, outside of our schools, so this generation can learn, number one, and they can get out of school, make decisions for themselves, and have a good head on their shoulders without political influence and pushing them this way or that way. When I was raised in school, I was a millennial. We didn't have so much political influence in school. And if you look at the statistics of learning at that time, they're much better than today. I just believe there's so much being poured in, not just our schools, but just our state in general, and different areas of our state, in the economy, in the job world. It's poured in there. And you've got it in so many different areas. And we need to make sure that our country is truly free. Because right now, I look at some areas of this country and I say, that doesn't seem free. Charlie Kirk said that, we have a plethora of professors in colleges that are spewing liberalism down the throats of our students. And if you look at statistics, he's right that it says, and there's even recent statistics about this, that those who are educated and that go to college usually come out to be liberal when they're done. And that should tell you something. So I believe that we need to get back to what our forefathers intended. I believe we need to have our school systems who are absolutely free. And when I say that, I also mean free to learn in a good environment. I think that this country needs to head in a different direction than what it has. I believe that the state needs to head in a little bit of a different direction than what it has, in terms of who we vote into office and what they believe, because our core beliefs matter. Conservatism needs to stay in the state, and it needs to stay in our hearts. If there's anything that I have noticed recently, and I've recently spoke about this, it's that our Kansans are telling me they feel hopeless about voting. because they feel like who they vote in is not going to be trustworthy, or they're going to get into Washington and they're going to turn into a dirty politician. And I'm hearing that so often, and they don't want to vote because of that.
And well, recently, we know that the Republican Party of Arkansas increased the fees, which you just had to pay that
Yes.
$40,000 where it was like 20,000 to run against a incumbent senator such as Tom Cotton. But you had to pay that $40,000. That's crazy. So, I mean, I get where they're coming with that because they did that. That was like 10 people that voted that and didn't even ask the whole party in general to vote on that. They just like the board voted it in. And can you talk about how you feel about that? Because that was a big chunk of money, and from what I hear, you paid that on your own.
Yes. 100%. Uh, I feel like that fee hinders good people with our core values from running, because that is not an easy amount to get. And to be honest with you, I credit my faith. I credit God for that even happening. God has been good to me in that area and even being able to file. So I thank God for that. But I believe that is a hindrance to the Republican Party, because it hinders those who truly have good conservative values from running for that office.
So, I wanna ask you this. So, a lot of folks and a lot of the candidates running, for either party, and they say, "We're running for Arkansas." What do you think is broken in with our current sitting senator, and how do you believe that you can fix it?
So I get asked this question quite often. People often ask me, what set, and often I'm asked what even sets me apart from Tom Cotton, since we're both Republicans. But I want to be clear that even though I respect his service, after years in Washington, Tom has become part of the problem. And I'm hearing that from Arkansans all over the state. He's backed by big donors, some of them with China ties, while Arkansans' values get sidelined. And that's what I'm hearing from the people. The people's voice is what matters. They are who votes you in. And so I would do things differently by truly putting Arkansans first. And I know that sounds cliche, but I mean that with all of my heart. And not just putting them first, but keeping them first, because that's the most important thing. Are tired of seeing their politicians sell out the moment they get into Washington, D.C. Some appear to even be sold out before they get there. But I'm dedicated to two things: one is serving God, and two is serving the people. And absolutely nothing is going to stop me from doing that. I am just as fed up as every other citizen of this state. But I believe that Arkansas needs representation in Washington. And I believe that representation shouldn't look like Washington. But this political seat that I'm running for, the U.S. Senate seat, it should scream a sincere dedication to the people of Arkansas.
And so is there a place where you and Tom Cotton, like, on policy or strategy or leadership part ways? Because here's my problem, like, Tom, yeah, he does some good stuff, like, but you know what? All his stuff, like, today I saw a post, I even commented on it, I was like, "You know what? This is common sense. Yes, we should stop drones." It was something like, "Oh, are you with me on stopping drones?" Even the NFL and the SEC are stopping drones from okay, that's common sense, and we've been saying that for 15 years, and you're just all of a sudden now thinking that drones are a problem? I mean, I remember being on the radio on KARN 15 years ago talking about how I had one flying over my backyard and I was gonna shoot it, you know? I mean, because there
Right?
needs to be regulations about drones. That's 15
Yep.
years.
Yep.
So a lot of his policy that he puts forth and claims to be a genius about it, it's really just common sense, and I laugh at that because I'm like, "What do you think? You're just this big brain or something?" Like, that's literally something that should have been done a long time ago.
Right.
So where do you part ways on something? Because, a lot of the stuff that he does falls in line with Republicans, but you don't hear him talk about Arkansas. That's the problem. It's always
Yes.
about China but I mean, you're still, I mean, you still agree with the ways that the things that he does, right? And to an extent.
I agree with his conservatism. I don't agree with a lot of his stances on some things. Like, I am not pro-war, and I don't believe that is a good character, a good leadership characteristic, I should say, to have.
Agree.
Being in that Senate position, it's important. It's one thing to want to defend your country, but when your state and your country is constantly hearing you push war, that is a red flag. We should strive for peace because if there can be peace, there should be peace. We should not be pushing for war. And that's the number one thing I hear Arkansans saying, and that I myself have seen from Tom Cotton. He's always pushing for war. And that to me is a red flag. Something else that bothers me because this means so much to my heart is our farmers. Tom has opposed more than one bill that could have critically helped our farmers with subsidies, with insurances. And, meanwhile, 1 in 3 farmers could shut down by mid 2026 due to high costs and low prices, you know? So Arkansas needs a senator that's going to fight for fair regulations for our farmers, and not just our farmers, but our workers as well, innovation, and they need someone to support the ag economy. Our agriculture is everything in Arkansas. We are a farming state. We should be breathing life into that area. And, right now you look at it and they feel like the life has been drained out of them. So that's a huge part in my heart that rips because I'm feeling the farmers' pain. I'm feeling Arkansas's pain in those areas.
So since we're on that topic, I know you live in a rural part of the state.
Uh-huh.
Um, I don't mean to intrude, but people are gonna ask this. What do you do for a living?
So I'm glad you asked. So I am a minister, by trade. I'm a minister, but I had went paralyzed from the waist down. I've talked about this before. I've been paralyzed from the waist down twice, actually. So I've recovered twice from being paralyzed from the waist down. Now, actively during that time, yes, I was still a minister, and I went straight into doing this afterwards. But I am actually freshly recovered from being paralyzed from the waist down this last time. And so that's actually the reason why I got into the race as late as I did, because when I did this, I wanted to make sure that I was able to stand up and be strong and literally stand up. I don't mean to be funny, but literally stand up and be strong for Arkansans. I wanted to give them a voice. And, here I am today. I'm walking, I'm doing great. And, I credit God for that too. But while I'm on that topic of being paralyzed, being a minister in the past, I I always emphasize because I went through what I went through in those hard times, they made me who I am today. It made me stronger. It gave me understanding. And I say that to say this that, I've been a part of the medical system. I know what it's like not to be able to afford healthcare. I know what it's like not to be able to afford your medical bills. And I know what it's like to be down on your luck and not know how you're going to pay your bills or get groceries. I understand those things. And I truly believe that it's time we have someone in office that understands those things. Because how can you change something if you don't understand it? How can you help
Hallelujah.
people if you don't understand where they come from?
I think a lot of
So,
people
yeah,
these days don't understand. They don't. They
right
don't deal
now.
with it, so they don't understand it, and they don't even think about it.
They don't try to understand it because they're not listening to the voice of the people. They're not seeing what's actually going on. And it's important you have someone in office that does see what's going on, because if they know it, they felt the burden of the people and what they're going through, and I have, then they're going to be more determined to change it, to introduce legislature to change it. And that is so important. So though I come from humble beginnings, my Christian faith is important to me. I was a youth pastor. I served the youth in Jackson County for years. I've been a pastor as well of a non-denominational church. But though I come from humble beginnings, to me, that fuels my fire because I believe Arkansas needs someone from humble beginnings that's not sold out to big money, that's not sold out to Washington, D.C. before they ever even get there or when they get there. It's important that you have someone that knows what the people are feeling.
And can I ask you how in the world you got paralyzed? Or is that
Absolutely.
I don't mean to pry. I'm curious.
Nope. Yeah, absolutely. It was due to Guillain-Barré syndrome. Now that's kind of a long word. It's called short for GBS, but it's called Guillain-Barré syndrome, and it can be contracted due to vaccinations or a stomach virus or eating uncooked meat that has a certain bacteria in it. I contracted it through a stomach virus, and so I am part of 5% of the world that got Guillain-Barré syndrome twice. Most people get it once and you're done. I was part of 5% of the entire population of the world to actually get Guillain-Barré syndrome twice. And, it was really hard on my body. And it just, it did take a toll on me for a while, but it made me so much stronger. And, I feel for people that are in the same position now that I was back then. I advocate now for young women who have been paralyzed due to Guillain-Barré syndrome. And most of what I'm hearing is that it's coming from vaccinations. That wasn't my case, but most of what I'm seeing is those who do have it today or have gotten it in the last few years, it has been due to vaccinations. So I try to give those young women a voice as much as possible, and it matters a lot to me. So, yeah.
I had no idea that you could get that from a stomach virus.
Yes. It's not just any stomach virus. There's a certain bacteria. It's a long word. I'm not going to try to pronounce it because I'll butcher it. But there's a certain bacteria. It is a rare bacteria that can be found in a stomach virus. And yeah, that's what got me.
Wow. Okay. So let's switch topics now that we know about that. Question answered. No. So the Republican Party, it's divided. I recently wrote an article about the Civil War in Arkansas with the GOP, and apparently it's burning folks' ears across the state, and it got quite a bit of views and a lot of positive feedback to me, that is. But where do you situate yourself within today's Arkansas GOP, within that Republican Party? Are you old school, or are you grassroots, or are you something else?
I would say I might be a little bit of old school and a little bit of grassroots, a little bit of all of it. I don't know what to classify myself as other than a patriot. You know, I stand where your basic conservative beliefs are, but I stand with the people as well. So anything that would not give the people of this state or this country a voice, I would step away from and I would shy away from. And I believe you are seeing that split right now more than ever is because the people of this state feel like who they have elected, who have been in these seats, have not represented them. And so they're wanting to pull a different way. And, there are others in the party that want to stick with the same way it's always been. But if you ask me in my travels and speaking to Arkansans, especially recently, they are not happy with how the particular seat that I'm running for has been held. So I can understand the split that is happening. And, I spoke about this recently, but we have got to bring that back. And we don't bring it back with just the thought of, oh, this needs to be together. No, we need to bring it back so we can come to, number one, a place of unity for our state and to bring it back so we can bring that spirit of patriotism back to our state. And the only way that we are going to be able to bring that patriotism back to the state of Arkansas is through honest politics. Arkansans are tired of dirty politicians. They're tired of sitting back watching politicians get rich while good people suffer. And I share that with them. So I can understand the split that is there, but I do believe that it can be mended. And I believe that, with time and trust, I think, well, let me put it this way. I think with time, I can earn Arkansans' trust for them to know and understand that I truly want to give them a voice in Washington, D.C., and that U.S. Senate seat, because that is what that seat was intended for by our forefathers.
Okay, now I have to switch gears here for a second because for me, for the last 15 years, I've been screaming about term limits because, in my opinion, we are still dealing with the Clintons. You know, I mean, even Hillary, like, I feel like folks get in there, like, Hillary was in there when Nixon She
Yeah,
helped get Nixon impeached. That's a long time ago. So we've had to deal with her crap. But when it comes to senators and congressmen, if there's no term limits, we're literally in there and we're paying for their deals, the backroom kickbacks or whatever that they get from people, corporations, other countries or whatever, the deals that they make, we have to pay for it.
yeah,
And I believe that we need term limits, and I've said this many times, and they're like, "Well, nobody's gonna vote for themselves, so we need a constitutional convention." No, we don't need a constitutional convention, especially not in this
right.
political climate. What we need is someone who will step in and vote and initiate term limits because and they're like, "Well, nobody's gonna do that." Well, then you vote them out. You vote them in until they do, and then you keep
Yeah.
and if they won't, then you vote them out. That's how
Yes.
you do it, but we have to get people in there that are for term limits. How do you feel about that?
I 100% agree. And one thing that I have heard, I can't blame people for being discouraged over term limits not being implemented yet. But one thing I have heard is, that one term limits will never happen because, senators aren't going to vote against themselves. I disagree with that. You've got to vote the right people in. You've got to vote people in that truly have your best interest at heart. And, I believe that we should have term limits. And it's actually one of my biggest campaign points. And that's how strongly I feel about it. We need term limits. Politicians, for some reason, when they stay in office for a prolonged amount of time, what happens is they forget about the people they serve. And they forget about the voice of we the people. They forget about the agenda of the people that voted them in, and they do their own agenda. And then they start to mold themselves to the agenda these bureaucrats in Washington, D.C. So, I get the frustration. I am frustrated with it, but we must have term limits. We should not have politicians in there for years and years, decades. You know, we need new voices in Washington, D.C., and the people deserve that representation. We shouldn't have the same voices over and over, decade after decade. That's not what our forefathers intended. That's not what they wanted. And I 100% stand with term limits in Congress.
Yeah, the word I'm looking for, the word I was looking for was favors. They have to pay
Yes.
back those favors once they're high up in DC, and we just it holds us to the accountable for those favors. The longer they're in office, the more favors they have to pay back.
And it's not even like in office when they're running, a lot of these politicians that run for election, they will end up owing favors before they're ever been voted into the next election. And the reason why is because they want that money to their campaign, and they will do what they can to get it. And so then you vote that person in. It's important to look at donor records, in my opinion, if you're going to vote someone in. I think that's very important because you need to know who is backing them, and where that backing's coming from. So I encourage all of Arkansans, look at the donor records of the people that you're going to vote in, or look at every candidate's voting records. It's important to be informed, but yeah.
Okay. What are your top 3 priorities in your first 100 days if you win this election?
I'm glad you asked. So, number one, term limits, like we just spoke about, that's one of the biggest ones. That needs to be at least advocated for and pushed as soon as possible. I know that there's like a handful of others that are doing it right now, but I believe that term limits can be implemented, and I believe it's in the hands of the voters. So, number one, pushing term limits, that is super important. Something else that I have spoken about is, and I haven't got to talk about it here on this with you, so I'm about to, and I'm super excited about it, but I am advocating for school safety. And I believe that you can have school safety while keeping your Second Amendment rights. Listen, I pack every day, okay? I love my Second Amendment right. I carry. And I don't understand why Congress has made things so black and white. Our children are afraid to go to school. And that is a problem. And the fact that I haven't heard any Arkansans in federal offices speak about this is kind of heartbreaking because it's what our Arkansas families are dealing with. Our children are afraid to go to school. There's been so many school shootings. And so I did my own research, and I think that's important for every candidate to do if you're going to be running for office. Do your research and citizens as well. So I found what is called an artificial intelligence weapon detection system. And what it does is it goes into existing cameras at a school and it will detect guns before it ever enters the building. Now, I'm not saying that something like this is a solve all, but it's most certainly something that can help with the situation that we are dealing with in this nation.
It's definitely
So
something to look at.
absolutely. And not only that, but it also gives it goes into existing cameras at a school. It's basically a software. It makes it a smart camera. Okay. It can detect guns. And let's just say that a gun does get into the school. You remember Uvalde? Um, so what happened with Uvalde is those officers waited outside in the hallway and outside of the school, tons of officers, because they did not know where the threat was. They didn't know where the shooter was. And a lot of innocent lives were lost because of that. Now, with this that I'm speaking of, this technology, what it would do is it would provide a live feed for the sheriff's department, the police department, and the resource officer of that school. And so that makes a huge difference and it eliminates the problem that Uvalde had. Now, like I said, these are just steps in the right direction. But on top of that, when I speak about this, there's one thing that keeps coming up from Arkansans that I kept hearing, and that was that they said, well, why not just arm school administrators? So when I first heard that, I said, okay, you know what? Let me do some research. Let me do some thinking. And I did. And, I can't say I disagree with that. And so this is what I have come up with and that I think is a basic beginning plan. It's open to be improved, of course, but I believe that with the artificial intelligence weapon detection systems, that with arming maybe, 1 to 3, 1 to 5 school administrators that are trusted, I think it can make a huge impact. And so you may ask me after hearing that, well, how do you guarantee a child isn't going to get a hold of that gun that that school administrator has? And so I went to research in there too, and this is what I found. I believe that biometric grid lock boxes are the answer. And you say, well, what is that? It is a military grade box that you would lock that weapon in, and it is only opened by fingerprint. And so I think that it is a step in the right direction. I have a lot of Arkansas have come up to me and spoken to me about this issue. And I believe that it is definitely a deterrent, if nothing else. The last question, and I'll end on this with this aspect of it. The last question that I get concerning the artificial intelligence weapon detection system is, well, where are you going to get the funding? And this is my answer to that. Arkansas actually allocates funding for school safety, and that artificial intelligence falls underneath school safety. So all you have to do is apply for it. So if anyone even listening to me now would be interested in it, that's already available to them for them to go and look into and apply for. So school safety is important to me. I believe our children should feel safe at school. I think our parents should just have a little bit more security, when their child is sent off to school, knowing there's going to be a few more measures there in place when they send their child to school.
So what kind of
So
legislation would that look like in the US Senate? Because not all states have what we have for kids in
no,
school.
that is no, that is true. So I'm actually actively doing it now. I am actually actively making up legislation. I'm writing up legislation for this
Look at you
and
already
able to
writing
put
the legislation.
I am. I've actually, not only that, but I mentioned farmers earlier. I'm actually making a plan called the Ashby Harvest Plan, and I am trying my best to stop the monopolization on farming seeds. I've actually already taken action for this, and once I do get there, and even I'll be honest with you, whether I get there or not, I'm going to be pushing it and trying to get it into the right hands and making sure that this is something that gets pushed through. Now, of course, you have your liberal states, and they may not want it. It's totally an optional thing. I don't think any school should be forced to do this, but I do think that schools should have the options to feel safer and have as many tools available to them to make sure that they do feel safe.
So I want to hear more about this farming bill.
Yes. Okay. I want to actually talk about what farmers have been telling me because, like I said, I truly believe the voice of the people is what matters. And so my I opened up my social media and I put something out there. I said, "Farmers, I want you to get a hold of me. I want to speak to you. I want to know what you're going through." And after I spoke to them, they expressed to me some concerns that I believe every American citizen, not just Arkansans, should be concerned about as well. And one of those is the following, and this is the biggest thing that I am working on right now and still actively researching and working on it, but it is in the makes. It is in the making. So, one thing that I've heard from row crop production farmers is that their seeds have a monopolization on them. Okay. Now, this is important, and I'm going to tell you why. There are three major seed companies that have monopolization of seeds in America. Okay. It's called Bayer, Corteva, and Syngenta. And I always tell Arkansans when I say this, I say, if nothing else, please listen to what I'm about to say. And when you get done listening, take what I'm saying and be a voice for the farmers. I can be a voice all day long, but it really helps when other people learn about this and they too become a voice. So those three companies that have a monopolization, Bayer, Corteva, and Syngenta, own approximately 70% of our row crop seed supply. So Bayer is a German company and they bought Monsanto. Okay. Corteva is the only monopolized American company that we have to buy seeds from in this nation. That alone is worrisome. Syngenta is owned by CanChina. Okay, that speaks for itself. So we have one American company here that I just mentioned that has a monopolization on seeds. So what happens is when these seeds are monopolized, the competition is weeded out and companies can make prices as high as they want. So they can fix prices on those seeds, whatever they want, because they have a monopolization on those seeds. And that's not just it. Another thing that is taking place in these companies is they are patenting the technology that goes into these seeds to make them. All right. Some seeds are generated to maybe last better in a drought or maybe react better to a fertilizer, and so that technology is patented, and it basically puts our farmers into a contract when they buy these seeds. And when they do buy these seeds, they are paying for the patent and the technology on those seeds. So our seed tech in this nation is patented, and the amount of seeds that are patented and the technology and what it is costing our farmers is outrageous. So I will say this. I commend President Trump for the soybean deal that he did with China because another issue we have been having with our farmers is Brazil was greatly benefiting from our tariff wars here in America, and it was hurting our farmers. And the reason that is because America, while we were raising our tariffs, I believe as we should have, countries that were buying from us at one point, such as our soybeans, our row crops, they went to Brazil to buy from them to bypass America's tariffs. So I'm very grateful that President Trump did do the soybean deal with China because Brazil was producing soybeans and other countries were buying from them instead of us. So that does help greatly. But when it comes to our farmers, there's some statistics that I like to throw out before I ever end the conversation, and that is bankruptcies for our farmers just in Arkansas are up 30% this year alone. Now, that may not sound like much, but that is astronomical compared to years previously. And so our farmers are needing our help. And if you go and you talk to the local farmers, they will tell you suicide rates are up for farmers right now because they're so financially stressed over their farms. And the big, beautiful bill kicks in mid spring. in 2026, and it has a subsidy portion that's going to help them greatly. And that too, I am grateful for. But the issue is, and why I'm pushing this out now, is our farmers are struggling right now more than ever. And a lot of them are worried they're not going to be able to plant. So take this information and be a voice. We must stop monopolization on our seeds. If our farmers cannot plant, we do not eat. Prices are entirely too high for them right now, and it is very important and it is super urgent.
Yeah, you think the SNAP shutdown? You think not getting SNAPs important? Wait till farmers stop farming.
Exactly. And I think people would be astounded to know how many have already given up their farms, have already filed for bankruptcy, and are not able to plant. And it really is an urgent situation.
So we've heard a lot about you today, Micah. A lot of stuff that maybe folks didn't know because you are, like I said, not new to politics because of your heritage, but you're new to Republican Arkansan politics, possibly.
Yes.
So, what's the biggest misconception people they have about you as a candidate?
It's my age. I'm 34 years old. I'm young, and a lot of people think that when you're young, you're not as educated, you're not as experienced, you're not going to know what you're doing. I disagree. I think that the younger generation is rising up right now, and I think you're about to see a whole lot more younger people running for office. And I think a lot of the Charlie Kirks of the world have a lot to do with that. The younger generation is about to take over politics. I firmly believe that. And I think we need that, and that goes right along with term limits. We definitely need those.
Well, I want to thank you for being on my podcast today and giving me this exclusive interview because, I mean, this to me, this is big news. I mean, you're running against Tom Cotton. Like, that's literally huge because he's like one of the most Washington, D.C. funded people in the
Yeah.
Senate. So, how do you feel
From
about
liberal.
running against that?
I'm a lot of people have said, what are you thinking? What are you doing? I'm thinking that it's worth it. Everything I go through in order to get to that seat is worth it. The fight is worth it because we, the people, deserve a voice in Washington, a voice that is not sold out, a voice that doesn't look like Washington. We need someone who truly embodies Arkansas in the natural state. And I truly believe I'm carrying that with me and I'm trying my best to. And I will represent the people. I will not represent bureaucrats in Washington.
I heard that, sister. It's really sad because I used to have Tom Cotton on my show too, and he really turned just like Asa, he turned into be a big, huge disappointment. Huge
Yeah.
disappointment. And he literally was not he's never here. He's never in the state. Like, anyway, I don't want to get into that because this is about you today, not him. But I just want to thank you for hanging out with me and giving my listeners a little bit of who you are and what you're about. I think they'll be pretty impressed when they tune in.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it. And phone line's always open if you ever want another interview.
Oh, well, I'm sure they will be in the future. But also let people know where they can go to donate because you need some help with that $40,000, girl. You can't just shelter that.
You got that right. So you can go to my website. My website is ashbyforusenate.com. And there is a little donate button. As soon as the page comes up, you hit it and you can donate there. And I encourage everyone to go on my website. I have a little about me section. You can read all about me and all of my points, everything that I believe in, is even from, we need less big government and local control to reading about more about our farmers and school safety. So I encourage everyone to go on and check it out. And there is a donate button as soon as you pull it up.
I will just say to that when I went to your website, I was like, oh, love her hat. I'm always wearing a cowboy
Thank
hat.
you.
I always have my hat on. Everyone's like, love your hat, love your hat. And I'm like, this girl wears a hat. I like her already.
Yes, I'm a hat woman through and through. I love it.
Love it. Well, Micah, we'll talk to you again soon. Have a great weekend.
Yes, you too. God bless.
All right, y'all. That was Micah Ashby, candidate for the United States Senate seat right here in Arkansas. And you just heard her lay out a very different kind of Republican message than what we've gotten used to from our sitting senator. She's talking about term limits. She's talking about school safety without giving up your Second Amendment. She's talking about farmers on the edge of bankruptcy and her plan to help them. And she's talking about Arkansans feeling ignored and hopeless about voting because too many politicians get to Washington and start paying back favors instead of serving the people who voted them into office. Micah stepped up to the plate. She paid that $40,000 filing fee that the Arkansas Republican Party recently upped from $20,000. She's not backed by the DC machine. She's a 34-year-old minister from Augusta who's been paralyzed twice, walked again twice, and is now asking for the chance to carry Arkansas's voice to Washington instead of Washington's agenda back to Arkansas. If you want to learn more or help shoulder that financial load, you can go to ashbyforussenate.com. That's ashbyforussenate.com. Read her platform. And if you feel led, make a donation. You know, every small dollar that Arkansas donates to her campaign sends a message that this seat belongs to the people of Arkansas, not DC and the Beltway. I'll be watching this race closely, and you can bet this won't be the last time you hear Micah's name on Full Val Mode. So until next time, stay sharp, stay loud, and don't let anybody in DC tell you what Arkansas thinks. This is Val Emmons, and you've been in Full Val Mode.